Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Your presence means the world to me. Thank you for choosing our video on ESORTS 211 Geographic Information Geomatics. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. ESORTS 211 is a standard technical committee formed within ISO, tasked with covering the areas of digital geographic information such as used by geographic information systems and geomatics. It is responsible for preparation of a series of international standards and technical specifications numbered in the number range starting at ISO 19101. The chair of the committee was 1994-2016 Olaf Østensen, during 2017-2018 Christina Wasström, and from 2019 Agneta Gren Engberg. Brace yourself for an in-depth analysis as we navigate through scope and its far-reaching implications. ESORTS 211 is concerned with the standardization in the field of digital geographic information. This work aims to establish a structured set of standards for information concerning objects or phenomena that are directly or indirectly associated with a location relative to the Earth. Project specification areas within the ESORTS 211 Technical Committee include simple features, access reference models, spatial and temporal schemas, location-based services, metadata, web feature and map services, classification systems. The ESORTS 211 work is closely related to the efforts of the Open Geospatial Consortium. ESORTS 211 have numerous liaisons with other organizations that often results in identical or nearly identical standards often being adopted by both organizations. Let's now turn our attention to working groups and examine its role within the larger context. The work within ESORTS is done in working groups, each with a specific focus. The currently active working groups are Working Group 1 Framework and Reference Model, Working Group 4 Geospatial Services, Working Group 6 Imagery, Working Group 7 Information Communities, Working Group 9 Information Management, Working Group Ubiquitous Public Access. There are also a number of disbanded working groups: Working Group 2 Geospatial Data Models and Operators, Working Group 3 Geospatial Data Administration, Working Group 5 Profiles and Functional Standards, Working Group 8 Location-Based Services. Revision of standards that were previously part of these working groups are now done directly under the TC since the disbandment of the groups. Moving on to the next segment, we have published standards. The list of standards by the ESORTS 211 Committee ISO Standard Representation of Geographic Point Location by Coordinates ISO Geographic Information Reference Model ESODIS 19101 Geographic Information Reference Model Part 1 Fundamentals ESODIS 19101 Geographic Information Reference Model Part 2 Imagery ESODIS Geographic Information Conceptual Schema Language ESODIS Geographic Information Terminology ISO Geographic Information Conformance and Testing ISO Geographic Information Profiles ISO Geographic Information Spatial Schema ISO Geographic Information Temporal Schema ISO 19109 Geographic Information Rules for Application Schema ISO Geographic Information Rules for Application Schema ISO Geographic Information Methodology for Feature Cataloging ISO Geographic Information Spatial Referencing by Coordinates ISO 19111 Geographic Information Spatial Referencing by Coordinates Part 2 Extension for Parametric Values ISO Geographic Information Spatial Referencing by Geographic Identifiers ISO Geographic Information Quality Principles ISO Geographic Information Quality Evaluation Procedures ISO Geographic Information Metadata ESODIS 19115 1 Geographic Information Metadata Part 1 Fundamentals ISO 19115 Geographic Information Metadata Part 2 Extensions for Imagery and Grid Data ISO Geographic Information Positioning Surfaces ISO Geographic Information Portrayal ISO Geographic Information including ISO Geographic Information Surfaces ESORTS Geographic Information Functional Standards ESORTS Geographic Information Imagery and Grid Data ESORTS Geographic Information Geomatics Geomatics Qualification and Certification of Personnel ISO 19123 Geographic Information Schema for Coverage Geometry and Functions Fundamentals ISO 19123 Geographic Information Schema for Coverage Geometry and Functions Coverage Implementation Schema ISO 19123 Geographic Information Schema for Coverage Geometry and Functions Coverage Processing Fundamentals ISO 19125 Geographic Information Simple Feature Access Part 1 Common Architecture ISO 19125 Geographic Information Simple Feature Access Part 2 SQL Option ISO Geographic Information Feature Concept Dictionaries and Registers ISO Geographic Information Geodetic Codes and Parameters ISO Geographic Information Web Map Server Interface ISO Geographic Information Imagery Grid and Coverage Data Framework ISO Geographic Information Imagery Sensor Models for Geopositioning ISO 19132 Geographic Information Imagery Sensor Models for Geopositioning Part 2 SAR INSA LiDAR and Sonar ISO Geographic Information Data Product Specifications ISO Geographic Information Location-Based Surfaces Reference Model ISO Geographic Information Location-Based Surfaces Tracking and Navigation ISO Geographic Information Location-Based Surfaces Multimodal Routing and Navigation ISO Geographic Information Procedures for Item Registration ISO 19135 Geographic Information Procedures for Item Registration Part 2 XML Schema Implementation ISO Geographic Information Geography Markup Language GML ISO Geographic Information Core Profile of the Spatial Schema ISO Geographic Information Data Quality Measures ISO Geographic Information Metadata XML Schema Implementation ISO 19139 to Geographic Information Metadata XML Schema Implementation Part 2 Extensions for Imagery and Grid Data ISO Geographic Information Schema for Moving Features ISO Geographic Information Web Feature Surface ISO Geographic Information Filter Encoding ISO 19144 Geographic Information Classification Systems Part 1 Classification System Structure ISO 19144 Geographic Information Classification Systems Part 2 Band Cover Meter Language LCML ISO 19145 Geographic Information Registry of Representations of Geographic Point Location ISO Geographic Information Cross-Domain Vocabularies ISO 19147 Geographic Information Location-Based Surfaces Transfer Nodes ISO Geographic Information Linear Referencing ISO Geographic Information Rights Expression Language for Geographic Information GERL ISO TS 19151 Geographic Information Ontology Part 1 Framework ISO 19152 Geographic Information Ontology Part 2 Rules for Developing Ontologies in the Web Ontology Language OWL ISO 19152 Geographic Information Land Administration Domain Model LADM ISO 19153 Geospatial Digital Rights Management Reference Model GEM ISO 19154 Geographic Information Ubiquitous Public Access Reference Model ISO Geographic Information Place Identifier PI Architecture ISO Geographic Information Observations and Measurements ISO Geographic Information Observations Measurements and Samples ISO 19157 Geographic Information Data Quality ISO Geographic Information Quality Assurance of Data Supply ISO 19159 1 Geographic Information Calibration and Validation of Remote Sensing Imagery Sensors and Data Part 1 Optical Sensors ISO 19161 Addressing Part 1 Conceptual Model ISO 19170 Geographic Information Discrete Global Grid Systems Specifications Part 1 Core Reference System and Operations and Equal Area Earth Reference System. Stay connected and join our community by subscribing and following me on other platforms.